Okay. Okay. So this is basically something that I have learned in the past, and I've always practiced. Okay. And I think it's a very simple understanding of concept. Okay. Have you seen this in your class? Okay. I promise you it's buzzer. Okay. For those who is international, this is actually intention, act, and output. Okay. Simple. Right. So you have not seen this before. Never. How about in your class, RG 122? Takkan tak ada. Where are you now in RG 122? Construction. Sorry? Right now, okay. Construction. I'm pretty sure you should go to, you have learned intention? Right. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay. So these three things you can't run away when you talk about concept. Okay. Because it is actually the whole idea of looking at things. Okay. Let me tell you what it is. It sounds so simple. Okay. So if I'm going to tell you today, look, concept to me is this. So you get, what is this? No, it sounds so simple. It is. Okay, it is, right? Okay, but you need to get the fundamental right first. Okay. Okay, so what is that? Okay, so this is actually where concept is. Okay, and this is laku. Laku is an act, and your hasil is your product. Okay, so today, like I've told you just now, okay, I will have to introduce you to some of these terms that you may not expect today. Okay, but these are all that is. In your design process, like I told you, you have to pick up things from everywhere, from different classes and so on. This is where it is. Basically, this is how it is being combined to produce a great design. Okay? So let's look at it. Okay, concept. So you have philosophy, you have theory, you have intention, hypothesis, design statement. Okay? Some of these may not be relevant to a certain project. Some. Okay? Some may not have hypothesis. Okay, some may not have a theory to start with. Okay, some, right? Okay, so this is design approaches, right? So design approaches is very important. Okay, may I ask you, have you heard of design approaches? Yes. Okay. So does design approaches comes before concept or after concept? Anyone thinks that it comes before? So serious, so serious, you know. Is that concept so serious to you? Come on. Okay, when you do concept, it should be something fun. Okay? All right. Let me tell you. Okay? Design approach can be before or after. Okay? A lot of students who are struggling with this, concept can be a very big deal to them. Okay? So what they do, sometimes they come with approach first. No worries. Okay? As long as your output address what is it that you are saying in your concept and approaches. Okay? So ni yang kita kata janji manis. Okay? So janji manis, syaratnya manis. Sebab sometimes you give me sweet promises, but you don't achieve that sweet promises. Okay? So that's very important, right? So at the end of the day, because we follow you through 10 weeks project. First project, you're saying you want this, and finally you don't achieve. Okay? But is it wrong? Sometimes it's not wrong because you had to go through that process, right? Remember that branch process in the middle. So what you do, sometimes your concept will change. So what you do, in your final presentation, you have to go back to your concept and you have to revise your concept. So that is when your janji is still manis. Okay, your promises is not. Okay, right? So a lot of people don't do that. Okay, they forget about it. Oh, I have 10 blocks to look at. No, there's zonometry, there's sections, there's everything that's clearly one should as a concept. I've done my concept. You are wrong. Because when the panel comes in, when the assignment comes in, the first thing that you look at is maybe your 3D. Some of them are so engrossed with your 3D. Your 3D is so nice. But then, after they look at your 3D, they will then go back to your concept. Okay? So always remember that. There's always time for you to look back. Okay? Right. So this is always what is actually your objectives? So you start to think in a way, some people, they get a project, they already can foresee, oh, this is my project. You know, some people, they have that. Okay? Sometimes you do have that. You know that you feel so strongly about it. Then you go to the side, you feel the wind, I say, okay, that's it. Okay, I want this. So these are actually part of concept generation. Okay? If you are being very focused in your class, okay? And in RAG 132, I'm pretty sure when you learn intention, there's unconscious intention and there's conscious intention. Okay, he agrees. I think he's very concentrated. Okay, all right. So yes, there's unconscious and there's non-conscious. Okay, so means that sometimes that kind of concept can come in without you realize. Okay, so yeah. So why not? If it comes, you should grab it, right? Okay. So why concept? Okay. Because lecturers want it. Because it's in the brain. No. Okay. I tell you no. Because when you graduate, when you become an architect, this is what they want from an architect. Okay. You're supposed to be distinguished. Okay. Renzo piano. Maze Mandaro, they have their own style, right? Okay, so it is something very important, okay, because it basically tells, okay, what are you? What are your elements? How are you when you design, right? Okay, it gives that something to your work, right? It gives a story to your work, okay? If I'm going to put it this way, if you are given a 5 weeks project, I think 5 weeks project is as much for the first year. Okay, it's a long project. Okay, without a proper concept, without the right concept. Okay, not the right. That's never wrong or right concept. Okay, without appropriate concept for you, okay, you will not finish up the project. There's no drive. Okay, so sometimes, most of the time, concept drives your project. It gives inspiration to your project. Okay. Okay, so this is what concept means, right? Basically, it's an idea, all right? General idea derived or inferred from specific instances. Okay, so it's very synonym to idea. Okay, so the easiest way, when I was teaching back then in the first year, I would say that it's basically your intention, right? It's basically your intention, your idea, right? It is something that is framed in your mind, okay? I think that's quite clear when I talk about conscious, unconscious, right? Okay, so it is still something that big to you, okay? After maybe 10 slides, you still don't know how to do concept. What is this lady talking about, right? Okay, well, but you need to understand why you need concept, okay? You really need to understand. Surprisingly, well, I'm not so surprised, but my students are surprised when they come back in the 4th year, they come back to do their masters in the 1st year for this project. All of them are stressed out. Because why? We ask them to use produce a board, okay? Put their architects there, the one that they adore, and put themselves there. Each one of them, they have to have their face there, right? And not only that, you ask them to write their design philosophy. Okay, so if today, if I'm going to ask you, maybe you, okay, what are your design philosophy? You might jump, right? You might jump. Okay, not surprised. I asked my colleague the other day when we were presenting, I asked him to share, I asked Mike to share. He jumped, okay, right? Well, it's just something that sometimes, we are not, yeah, of course, because we are still in the process of designing, right? So we are not Renzo piano yet. Okay, so maybe sometimes, it disturbs us, right? But philosophy is something that you hold on into almost every project and you keep on repeating it. Okay, that is what is different with concept. Okay, concept can start all over again, right? But if you have a very strong philosophy in design, the concept that you hold on, it should be aligned to your philosophy. Okay, so I hope it somehow clears up from there. right? Okay, so what do you think? When you cannot do concept, what do you do? Okay, so today, okay, we are looking at concept and design approach. Okay, what is concept? Idea, right? What is approach? What is design approach? It's how, right? It's how you achieve your concept. Okay, concept is what, and the approach is how you're going to achieve your concept. It's a simple question. Okay, you may not get this in the exam. Okay, but this is good for your understanding. If people ask you, what is design approach? Do you get confused between design approach and concept? Do you? You might. Okay, if you don't practice this, you might. Okay, so what is the difference between design concept and design approach? You have to get this right. Okay, so basically when you use design approach are those strategies. Remember my very important slide just now, the white one, like Laku has said. Remember what is that Laku? Right? There's sub analysis, there's sub synthesis, there's strategies, and so on. So that is how hardworking you are. Okay, not to say this, sometimes people skip this process. Okay, because they think it's useless. What is important is the output. Okay, but that is not true. Okay, because it's the whole process. And getting your output, we have to go through this process. That's why it is aligned in that sense. Okay, right. Okay, a bit about what kind of concept there are in the world. Okay, there can be more. Okay, but this is common ones. Okay, there's analogies. Okay, there's metaphor. I think you are very close to metaphor. I don't know. I have to ask Dr. Chris about it. Okay, but it's a good attempt. Okay, it's all right. As long as you want to try out. Okay, so in the first year you always get, the what umbrella, the mushroom, and all that, all these kind of metaphors. Okay, it's all right. Right? Then Calatrava did the same. Right? Then all of these great architects is the same. Right? So it's a process. Okay. Then there's analogy, there's metaphors, there's essences, looking beyond pragmatic needs. Okay, this one, somebody can be very practical, very problem solution, then you look at that kind of thing. Programmatic concepts. Okay, so sometimes it's the project from the client's brief, and the brief is very specific, right? Maybe you are submitting to the government bodies and so on. So your building is very, it's a hospital, the guidelines are so you have those, right? And then ideals, looking at universal values, right? Okay, so I touched a bit about metaphor. Not that I want you to go towards metaphor, okay, because sometimes you might not get the right understanding of what metaphor is. Okay, so if you look at metaphors, it means carrying over as representative or symbolic. Okay, so if you look at that, there's sound, taste, sight, touch, smell. Okay, so a lot of times, okay, when you talk about metaphors, if you want to go really doing metaphors, then go really. Okay, but this is what you need to look at. Many times you just maybe look at this. Okay, I want it to be like a ball, so it's a ball. Okay, so try to think deeper. How if you are representing all your inspiration. Maybe it could be a beaver. So think how beaver walk, how beaver eat, and all that. Okay, so that's metaphor. So associate meaning, motion, things, times, that place which otherwise would not be with that. Okay, so this now we have this different. Okay, we talk about maybe metaphors during Calatrava time, right? And now we talk about biomimicry. Okay, so biomimicry have the same approach. Okay, it has the same approach. Okay, in fact, when we talk about Frank Lloyd Wright back then, when they, when we talk about Frank Lloyd Wright being focusing on organic architecture, right? So they focus on the nature and so on. Right? So this biomimicry is something not very new. Okay, it's in fact has been developed way back then, but perhaps the kind of terminology that is used is different. Okay, right. Okay, so that's biomimicry. I think there's a lot of you are trying to have this in your design. Okay, then you look at this, right? So this is again when we talk about metaphors. Okay, all of these are Kalastava's work. Okay, a lot of his work is, it's very symbolic. It's very, because he is also, what is he? He's an architect as well as engineer, right? Okay, he's a structural engineer, so that allows him to actually, push and then towards, exploration of the structures and so on. Okay, so if you look at his work, a lot of things is then related on this. Okay, but this is when it's focusing on metaphors. Okay, but what is interesting is that the fact that each of the design has its own storyline. Okay, so those storyline is actually part of the concept that we are talking today, right? Anybody knows this building? What does it remind you of? I think the first year, I don't know, one have this as a case study. Never seen it before? What does it remind you of? Come on. Telescope. How does it? Okay, a little bit of telescope put together. Okay, there are many ways to look at things. Okay. Any idea? We have never seen this before. This is in Singapore. What is it? It makes me hungry. It's a dim sum. Dim sum stacked together, right? So this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is NPU, right? So these are metaphors, okay? So go Google up, right? It's very interesting logic, right? Nanyang Technology University, which surrounds that whole atrium. This is the atrium. Although the towers which are clad in concrete have been light to the step wooden basket. Okay, so it's concrete, okay, but it's been stacked with wooden basket, in which gypsum is thin and served where shape is distinctly example of organic architectural concrete. So, okay, so sometimes design, sometimes it goes through that kind of process, right? But there's also another school of thought where we talk about when you use something natural, when you use say timber, right? One talks about being timeless and its versatility. It's very much so when you talk about timber. So sometimes you want to use the material as it should be. Okay, but in this case, I don't know. It's open for criticism, right? Any design that we do is open for criticism anyway, right? So when you design that in this way, it's actually clad in concrete. Okay, but finishing has been like to the step of the basket. So these are the right. So it goes back to your intention. Okay, is that what you want? Okay, some people might say that I want to use timber, I want to use natural materials so that air comes in. It's passively ventilated and so on. But sometimes when you do it the otherwise, and it's just stacked up, you may not achieve the full objectives. Okay, right? Then you have this. Okay, I think we have to do more case study, right? This is that one is just in Singapore, so I expect you to know. Okay, what about this? Anybody seen this? We will further up. Okay, this is in Oslo. Okay, it's an Oslo Opera House. Okay, monumentally is achieved through horizontal extension and up vertically. Okay? So you have learned about I'm not sure whether you have learned about it, but there's column, right? What do you call that column? Well, when we talk about monumental architecture, it has always been going up, right? So with that verticality, so it's always, when we talk about monumental architecture, it goes up. So this way, the architect wanted it to look, it's as if it's monument. Okay. So what more in the winter, right? It's all white, so it looks very much so. Okay. It's very sculptural and so on. Okay. So when you have this kind of design, then you start to does it makes you wonder when you see any buildings, then it makes you wonder, like what is actually the concept behind the design, right? Okay, so let's not talk about the concept much because the concept is actually the basis of the competition. The concept, this is also set for a competition. It's it has three things: the waveform, the factory, the carpet. Okay, so this is one of the design. It's not as distinctive as color transfer, where there's this eyeball and they talk about eyeball. Okay, there's this wall and the heart, and then we talk about the heart. Okay, but this is slightly different, where we talk about the concept being the three things: the waveform, the factory, and the carpet. Okay, so you read up what are those. So those are actually the approaches. Okay, so this is where what I'm trying to say is no design concept can be so much related to your design approach to enhance it. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you need one strong word for your concept. No, it can be built up with your approaches. Okay, so like for example this, yes, okay, and then these are the strategies. You know, when you talk about the wave wall, okay, the factory and the carpet. The wave wall is right next to the sea. It's a seafront, okay? And then the carpet, what does it mean? You know, those are the things, okay? So read up. When you see any design, you know, architectural design, try to see how is the concept being generated. Okay, what about this? Anybody can guess? Okay, what is it? It's a house? Yeah, it's a house. So the house inside a rock. Okay, this is in a UNESCO site. Okay, so the UNESCO site was, you know, was really the idea was actually on the natural setting of that. Okay, so houses were built this way, right? So look at how design, you know, can be incorporated, right? A lot of this kind of design that you can see, you know, if you look. If you read about, you know, a lot of other things, spectra and all that, there's a lot of design. Okay, right. Then we have this. Okay, this is thermal bath. Okay, with the zone with the concept architecture as atmosphere. Okay, remember the last part where I talked about values, right? So sometimes you want to have a certain aspect of architecture that have this kind of approach. Okay, so you have it like the architecture talks of the importance of the sound of the space to the way materials and services respond to touching and touching and so on. Okay, so sometimes design can be very straightforward, right? But what is the people, how do the people experience it? Okay, remember like last year, there's a competition by Ada, right? And the theme was empathy, right? So when clearly, when the theme is empathy, I had a difficulty too when I had to choose projects from my students, because all of them in the course sometimes they want to do high-rise project, all the talk about iconic and so on. Okay, so where's the empathy here? Okay, so it's difficult, right? But sometimes this kind of concept, you know, it might sound simple, but there's a lot of complexity in it. So when people talk about less is more, it's not as less, you know. To get to less is more is difficult, you know. A lot of design that comes in front when you show is so busy, right? So how do you reduce that and so on? So that will go through a lot of process. That process there, remember from the straight line to the crumple and the straight line again. So those are actually the process. Okay? Right. So this is some of your seniors' work. Okay, I think in the undergraduate works. Okay. So if you look at here, okay, can you identify the concept? What is the concept? Huh? What is the concept? Huh? Tak dengar? Tak dengar ke? What is the concept? Benar. That can be inspiration. Okay, but to look at the concept here, right? It's actually here. Arc of light, stone of memories. Okay, so sometimes your concept can also be very symbolic. Okay, when you have this kind of concept, but let me tell you, okay, a lot of times I will always try to tell my students, because sometimes they come with a concept where they generate the names, and these names are not, if you Google, you cannot find it. Okay, especially a lot of times they do that, right? So avoid that, okay, because that kind of concept sometimes, unless you really have to, you know, it's so pragmatic that you have to actually follow the brief and so on. It's a competition or something, you need it, your client wants it, then fair enough, okay? But if not, try to avoid it, because a lot of time you get stuck on how to deliver the concept, okay? So look here, what is the approaches? What are the approaches? Where is the approach? Where is the approach? You guys are whispering, come on. I know it's gonna get even worse if I have it online because you'll switch off your video. And then I'll be like, you know, meroyan sorang-sorang, cakap sorang-sorang. Come on, I'm here. Okay, what are the approaches? Okay, the upper part, right? We have design, we deliver a new image of the city, futuristic, modernistic, contemporary geometry, iconic facade. What is this? What is this? Anybody? Yes, well, yes. Idea, okay. Okay, actually this is part of design statement, right? Okay, there's another thing that we have not talked about today is actually design statement, okay? Design statement is something that you elaborated a bit from your concept and it becomes the whole, you know, statement, okay? But in this case, you know, it is actually segmented into few forms, okay? Into few things, right? Okay, so these are actually approaches and process. Okay, so your approaches and your process can go in line, hand in hand. Okay, so that's why if you look at your form making, right, that's a process. Okay, you start from a box and then it's segregated into two, and then you put something on top of so those are processes. Okay, those are also approaches, right? Okay, so then you have learned design concept, right? You have now look at design principle and element. Okay, remember again to the page that I had where I have Naku Hasil, right? At the center there where I have my approaches, I have this. Okay, right. This is especially when you talk about design project. Okay, a lot of way to start off is actually to look at these elements and principles. Okay, because the elements and principle of design is what you have learned, right, in the class. Okay, remember you do line, right? Then you repeat the line, you get what? What do you get when you repeat the line? Patterns, right? So patterns, and then you maybe get, other than patterns, what are those? You repeat the line, then you might get a harmonious effect. You might get a repetitive effect. You might get what else? Okay, so those are principles. Okay, so that I don't really go through as much today because I know that you know. Okay, so if I ask you what is line, line is elements, right? Okay, so there must be a clear understanding of this. Okay, elements and principles. Okay, right. So what is this? Is this elements or principles? Elements. Elements. Okay, these are elements. Okay, but what about this? It can be a principle. Okay, so it's a combination of elements you put together to achieve something, right? Okay, good. Okay, what about this? What about this? Is element principles? Principle. What are principles of this? Show me words. Partition, unity, no. Okay, contrast, right? Ready? So good that you know, right? Same with this, right? And what about this? Yeah, analyze, repetition, harmony, okay, what is this? Hierarchy, not really. Agree, okay, lagi. Disaster. Well, is disaster a principle? What is the term? Cluster? Did I get cluster? Okay, so what is this? The runaway group. What is it? What do you think about this? You know, currently, even the bakers are coming up with concept, you see? So that is how we have actually moved towards. You know, bakers you buy the products at 200 over cake kecil, tapi you know, saying, oh, this is premium whatever ingredients and so on. So life has changed. So that is how design thinking changed life. You know, daripada third world, more country, jadi, you know, so that all that. Okay, okay, coming back to this. Okay, what is this runaway group? What is it? Any guess? Okay, any guess? You beli cake kan, jadi nama. Right, so nama tu relate dengan cake. So this is actually your concept. Betul lah? So this is what I'm saying. You know, this is design thinking in daily life. You buy cake, the cake has name. Okay. When you dapat kata, okay, I want to buy online, I want a runaway group, okay. Suddenly I tak dapat runaway group. So this is what I meant by janji manis lah. Okay, you give a concept, but you don't achieve your concept, right? So same with cakes. Okay, when you say that you want something, you expect it. Dapat tu lah. Okay, so this is that. Right. So what interesting about this is, I want to talk about this. Okay, so we talk about deconstructed, right? So anybody watch MasterChef? Tak, my God, what in zaman apa? Tak lah, because I'm too old. Nobody watch MasterChef ada yang junior kan? You guys don't watch, is it? You watch, right? So that's this word, right? Deconstruct. Kan, you deconstruct food. Kan, I find it very interesting because I can totally relate. Okay, and what is more interesting is when you deconstruct food and you eat it, it feels the same, right? Betul tak? Tak tahu lah, you guys watch that. It's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to taste that way. It might not look the same, right? So that's interesting about deconstructivism, right? So this is where deconstructivism, when we talk about deconstructivism in the style of architecture, it can be something good as well, right? Okay, so deconstructed food is an art form. You see, it's an art form, a style of preparation, presentation, which is interesting masterpiece. So it becomes a masterpiece. So this is what I meant. Okay, I always find it a problem to find this here because I never get the right one, the nicest one. Okay, it's always be back, and I mean, my sister makes the best in KL. So you see, to get this, right? So you see a power bar, right? And you see how it is being, this is, we talk about deconstructed, right? So if I give you a piece of this, I'm able to taste the same taste, right? Okay, so these are principles and it's the same, right? But what are the elements? Elements can betul lah. So if you say 3 eggs, it has to be 3 eggs, right? So it's the same. Okay, I try to put this as analogy to you so that you get out of sometimes, because you must understand this way. Concept now has been applied in daily lives, and that is what we talk about design thinking. Okay, you want to buy shirt, you want to wear shirt. Today I'm in very bad mood. Okay, I'm not going to wear striking colors. Okay, so sometimes it does. So those are actually design thinking, right? You go out of the house, hey, shoes, you see, right? So design thinking, right? So let's get back to this. Okay, so you talk about deconstructivism, okay? Fragmentation of the constructed building harmony characterized by an absence of harmony in this manner. Okay, I like this statement. Okay, because you talk about principles to me just now. Right, so when we talk about that, it's the absence of this, right? Okay, but in a way, it still gives you one art piece, one masterpiece, right? Okay, so this is all everybody knows, this whose building is this? Okay, good, okay. Singapore tak tahu, Manjari tahu, okay. Right, so elements of design, okay, is visual components used in creating an object of composition, right? Principles of design in which elements are combined together. Okay, I had to put this because I think when you find the worst at your worst time, you don't know how to start off with your form making. You start with understanding your elements and principles. That is the easiest way. Okay, some of your senior meetings, very out of the box. Think about pergi macam, for example, I went to the site in Tanjung Marina. One of the students very difficult, to extract out his concept. After 1 week, I asked him, what is your concept? the frame. You see? So no, that's why it took him 1 week. Okay, so instead he went to the side, he feels the breeze. So he want to capture. So you see or not? Okay, so sometimes it takes longer time, but you must see 4 weeks project, man. How long you want to spend time on genetic concept? Okay, so after 2 weeks, I said stop. Okay, those of you who got the concept, stop. Okay, because you cannot. But they were eager, because when we said this is revisiting architecture language, so they wanted to keep on doing it. But you must remember, you have a timeline. Okay, you tak sampai konsep canggih pun tak siap, that's it. Okay, so sometimes you must tell yourself to stop and start to do it. So this is where I come in, when you then start to go with your approach. Leave your concepts sekejap on the side, and then you go with your approach and start to withdraw. What approach? But approach ni, you relate to the style. Okay, at least ada something that moves you. Okay, so then you kata, okay, set macam ni, okay, this is my approach. Okay, and then understanding it. Okay, you learn from your lecturers kan dalam class. Oh, okay, I think I want hierarchy. But when you choose your elements and principle, it has to be aligned. Okay, sepatutnya lah, sebab without choosing the right element, you tak boleh capai the principles kan. So this is where you should. So principles and elements can help your design concept, right? So tak payah fikir banyak. Cuba kadang-kadang students ni dia macam, okay, contohnya I want transformation. Principle ni, I nak this transformation to be part of my concept. And then I want apa? Maybe I want harmonious. So then they start to have this thing yang contradict. It can work, but sometimes some of you may not achieve that. So kadang-kadang you actually challenge yourself too much. Okay, so that to use help. Okay, try slowly and develop. Okay, have fun while doing your concept. That's the most important part of it. Okay, so this is one of the, because I talk about deconstructivism. Okay, so this is one of the memorials. Oh yeah, the word that I was thinking was obelisk. Okay, obelisk. Everybody knows obelisk. I think some of you may know, some of you may not. You should know. Okay, obelisk. What is the elements that gives an obelisk? Anybody knows? What are the elements of design? First, siapa tahu obelisk? What is obelisk? Tak tahu. The word obelisk is tiang. Okay, it's in the ancient time. Okay, there's a lot of columns were built during a certain era. I cannot recall. Okay, it's a monumental. It can also be sacred things. Okay, so it's a tiang. Okay, so imagine a tiang. Okay, that is the first element that starts. What is the element? It's a dot. Okay, so it's a dot. So it starts from dot and goes up. So these are elements. Kalau you dalam architecture itu kita akan explain in detail. So not today. This is a crash course, remember? So we leave that behind. So why do I go to obelisk? Because it reminds me of this. Okay, so even monumental becomes very structural. Yeah, this is because of the World War. That's right. There was some reason in Yugoslavia. So some memorials. Okay, so they unite this and put it entirely over all of the places to remind. Okay, right. Then you go to the principle of designs are the recipe for a good work of art. Okay, of course, sometimes you realize ada seorang guna elements je. Okay, they guna elements, but not understanding the elements can get you everywhere. So that's why sometimes kita say your design is too busy. Your design is all over the place. Okay, that is when you have too many elements, you don't tie them with a principle. Okay, if you do, simple. Yeah, I have 3 elements. My approach is hierarchy. That's all. You see, so senang kan? Okay, so I talk about rights and lines. Okay, when you go for design principles, okay, there is also things such as characteristics, the elements, the characteristics. Okay, so you need to understand this. Okay, example, very simple, but I think it's very powerful when you do your design. Some of you are saying vertical lines. Okay, what does it mean? So sometimes we ask you, why did you go for normal doors? Why are you going vertical? So you have these answers, right? approachable and formal. You have diagonal lines, more dynamic, spiral lines, just infinity, zigzag lines, electrical and exacting effects. No, you have that, right? Zigzag lines dalam punya schematic drawing, layout and all that. So it has meanings. Sometimes you don't go through this. You think that it doesn't matter. But actually, these are the words that build up your concept, that build up your approaches. Okay. I was just, while waiting for you just now, I was at the launch. I was reading AM magazine. You know, there's all this. You know, the words that they use. This is where, although you are very IT savvy, okay, but I want you to read magazine. Right? You can read it online, right? Design and all that. There are some words there. Capture those words and learn how people actually. So now you tak buat lagi design statement, but later on you will have to do that. Then you find yourself stuck bila you tak biasa. You need to inculcate this habit. Okay, learn to write a bit, not too lengthy. I'll tell you what I meant. Okay, right. So when it comes to elements, right, we were aware. We still talk at principles. Well, sebab dia susah lah. I don't know how to put crashing everything together. Okay, but I'm trying to show you what is important is these things, right? Okay, these things can help you to build up your approaches, right? Sometimes you say, I want something very dynamic, but your form is bulat. Okay, so actually, this is taken from books. I tak ingat who is it dictating? I don't know, but it's a black cover book. It's on landscape, but it's an architectural education book. Okay, it has the meanings. This is actually a theory. If you talk about rectilinear design approach, vertical and horizontal lines on a square grid, this is what it meant. Okay, so certain lines ada dia punya meanings, right? So this is what it meant, right? So then this is actually the approach. So sometimes you have it too much. Okay, you punya layout bulat-bulat, bukan layout, right? Bila it comes to you punya plan, that is bulat-bulat lah, layout semua bulat. Then you go for you punya form, you start to have. So this is where you need to control yourself, even in design, even in producing your concept and so on. Stick to it. Okay. So for example, when you talk about if we go for linear, right? We talk about static. We talk about define. We talk about flexibility, modularity. All that comes into linear. Okay. It's difficult. You can also go modularity with rounds, but there's ways to do it. Okay, this is what I'm getting at. Okay, so example, right? So you talk about flexibility. You talk about, if you look at the design, you think a certain way approaches. So your approaches and your concept, it has to be aligned. Okay. So for example, this is a renovation of interior layout. Then it talks about flexibility in its objectives, in its aims, right? And then if you look at the form, if you have a confined space in an interior layout, that's the best to do. Actually, to use a rectilinear lines. Okay? If you don't go round, you don't have the space. Right? You talk about interior, this is the best. Okay, so these are the things where I'm trying to show you how things are actually mapped. Okay? Right? Then when you talk about linear, then talk about transformative. Okay, you talk about subtractive transformation. Okay, transformation is principle. Okay, so bila you guna a principle of transformation, sometimes it makes it looks like it moves, right? Dia macam bergerak. Okay, so like for example, I think this is a very simple approach yang you all selalu guna. Okay, you start one solid block and then you start to punch the holes. You create a void. So these are the things that you should actually use. So sometimes this kind of concept when you talk about outside, inside. So those are actually how we do this, right? And then we talk about form follows function. What is form follows function is actually philosophy, right? It's actually a theory, philosophy that was coined by great architects. So you will know how it's aligned to the design and to the form. It's sort of like, there's some kind of direction. Okay, then this. Okay, then we talk about this in mechanism because this basically it's a house system that can rotate. Okay, but you still talk about it, then maybe your approach is one of the ways to be pragmatic, but at the same time, this, how you think, what are the principles here? You can say transform, whatever. Lagi? Oh, what is that? Repetition, right? So hierarchy, so there's a lot of things. So a lot of times you don't know your concept is because you don't use what you know, right? So you know principles of design, you know elements of design, so you actually should take it in with you, okay? Then you look at this, okay? So this is one of the example again. So you talk about house can transform, right? So in the layout itself, so this is where kita kata janji lah. When you promise something, so you can see it in your layout, you can see it in the form. Okay, a lot of times you said that, oh, it can transform. So your layout, okay, your office layout is like, yeah, it looks transformable. You have flexible walls, but how about the form? So here you see both achieving the concept. Okay, so when we talk about concept is not just at layout, not just at plans, right? Then we have this, okay? So this is also transformation, okay? I choose few principles. I don't go through all a lot because I know some of it are quite simple, okay? But like for example this, okay, this is static, okay? Static transform. Tadi itu dia means static. So if you look at the elements description just now, there is this, right? Okay, so a lot of you, you talk about this, right? And then you talk about order, repetition, hierarchies. So use all of these words in your approach. Okay, you have it. It's just that whether you use it or not. Okay, when you design, you keep on doing it, but you didn't take it out. So you just need to, I don't know whether you are not aware of the principles that you use, or you are thinking way beyond that. So actually, it's just right in front of you. You just have to take it out. Okay. Right. Then this is another way to look at approaches. Okay. Sometimes you may not use the principles words, but you are saying this. I want it floating. I want it to be, elevating space. So these are actually approaches again. Okay. Right. Then have this. Okay, so these are also transformation, right? But what is different is that if you look at the lines down, okay, they are static, right? If you look at this, it looks as if it's moving, right? Okay, it looks smooth, right? They look dynamic and so on. Okay, walaupun the concept is still transformation, but if you look at the design, if you look at the elements that we talked about here, it's no longer static, right? So why? Because this is actually having this kind of concept, right? So it's rapidly modified this approach. The approach is different. Okay, the other lines doesn't. Okay. So if you look at the words here, you see we talk about dynamic, intense, we talk about active, we talk about connecting, go, right? So these are the things. You have to try to relate to the concept, you have to try to relate to the project. Okay, kalau I buat library, I may not use this, but I don't know, maybe you are doing a youthful library, you want it to be very dynamic, very active, then you use this kind of, so you understand or not? So there is this principle and elements that has been addressed together. So sometimes that's where your ideas doesn't grow because you use what you think you know. Okay, so if you go on, you'll see like, look at this. This is just a layout of a landscape gardens, but it can look so nice, right? Okay, so then you talk about this. You see, jagged hands. It looks tense, right? And some part it looks sharp, right? Kita dah takut kan? Kalau saya run here, I feel not safe. But maybe that is the concept, right? So then you look at this. Okay, whose work is this? You guys need to go on more of your case study, right? You need to, because these are very common buildings that I showed, okay? So this is Daniel Libeski's work, okay? His work is usually, this actually the approach, right? It's very sharp, it's very, edgy, yeah? If you look at here, this is a museum, right? Even here, this is actually a church. right? So this is this kind of approach, right? So one is a straight line but broken into many fragments. The other is continuous line but continually indefinitely. So if you look, right, it's when he has this kind of approach, then you need to think of what are the concepts, right? So if you look here, between the lines, because for me it's about 2 lines of thinking or visualization. So you can say whatever, it's your concept. Okay, so when I did it, the practice of 4 weeks with my students, when they come up with the design philosophy, I cannot say, hey, your design philosophy is wrong. I don't say that. I can't say. Because that is what you are. Maybe you are born in paddy fields, you know. I am like this. I am born like this, so my design philosophy is this way. So nothing wrong. Okay, but it is wrong when you say your concept is this, but you don't achieve the concept. That is when it's wrong. So, well, diagonal still come out of this, yeah. The meaning concept between the 2 lines, between the lines. What can we say? Did we achieve it between the lines? You see a lot of lines there? Right? So, what is important is for you to achieve your concept. Whatever concept that is, as I said, there's no concept. Unless when you give the concept, it doesn't look like what you want to achieve. That is when it's wrong. Okay? Right. So that is rectilinear. That is also okay. Here we talk about irregulars. Okay, so when you talk about irregular line, okay, you can see it's very close earlier at the look at that. Okay, but irregular is very interesting. I kind of like irregular approach because it talks about the symmetrical. Okay, dalam we talk about asymmetrical balance ke tak balance? Balance, okay? It looks not balanced, okay? But it's actually balanced, okay? I don't have the picture here, but I have had that in my other class. You know, it is balanced, okay? That's why the asymmetry, okay? Tak balance ni, you know, tak proportion, kan? So it's not balanced lah. But that's why the word asymmetry, yeah? So asymmetry, soothing, diverse, exciting, surprising. So these are the words that you can use for your approaches, you know. Betul tak? Okay, contoh saya tunjuk you. For example, tadi ada buat library, kan? I kata I want to have this very quiet place, and then suddenly I have exciting, you know, it doesn't gel. Okay, so that for example, then the library tadi you talk about being symmetrical and so on. Tapi ini mungkin another different kind of approach of design. But it depends on you. Kalau you kata, I want to do a library that is loud, that allows people to talk freely, then mungkin your approach tadi bukan that linear tadi. It can be something else, right? So these are actually just elements, but how elements can play a role in achieving your approaches, right? So you look at here, juxtaposition. That's my favorite word, okay? Because when you talk about juxtaposition, it's still balance, okay? It talks about asymmetrical, okay? But it is put and placed at a place and it makes it look, everything is just nice. Okay, so for example, if you have the roof, right? If you look at the roof, okay? The roof is surrounded by all these buildings, right? But when you put the roof there, it's so different. But it is still carries that same, you know, language. It respects. And it gives, you know, so this is what we talk about juxtapositioning, okay? So it gives an excitement to a certain thing that is, you know, already there, okay? Right, so example again, right? So if you look at this, I'm not quite sure where to take quickly, right? So void, okay, this is, if you look about it, void space in the center generates the distance solution to make more viewing scenery. So that is actually one of the approach. Okay. So this is actually in the drawing. So you see in the design, it did achieve that. So simple approach transform into real thing. Okay, but then you have to look how it gels with the main concept. Okay. So you talk about letting every being exposed to nature, idea of sitting, these are all approaches. Okay, then maybe what is missing here maybe is that principles and elements there. Okay? Because when you talk about sitting, there can be many kinds of sitting. Okay, but if you say my approach is this, I want my sitting to be like this so that it is more exciting. So I took the grid, so use all that terms and words to help you to design. Okay, so this is one of the examples. So if you look at outside, okay, this is design statement. I thought about what architecture that is constructed with pine trees, salty, woolly, sand, and the sea should be like, and how to deal with the maturity in a way that presented the rightness of space. Okay. When you talk about design statement, right? When you talk about design statement, okay, it encapsulates many things. It's up to you which one that you want to enhance on. Okay. Usually people take the thing that is most highlighted in the design. Okay, so in this case, I don't know the pine tree, I don't know that. So part of it, right? Okay. Then you have that. Okay. We talk about maturity. Okay, the use of materials is beautiful. From the top, from the sitting that you can experience all that, right? Then, yeah, this goes back. Okay, why I choose this building? Because of the irregular shape, right? So abnormally angular boxes stacked on top of one another. So you see all the words that they use, right? The project satisfies two objectives, the conditions of the site and the view to the sea. So yeah, achievable, and it goes back to the concept, it goes back to the approach that it uses. Okay, and you have one more, okay, design of the lower part of the whole. So the other two target, one is the site, the shape of the site, and the other one is the sea. So that's why it makes it is juxtaposed a bit so that it achieves those, right? So yeah, okay, that's why I said design, you can do anything. As long as, because if you're saying that, why do I have this odd shape? Because it is part of the site, and that is my objective. What to say? It's your objective, right? Okay, right. Then I go to this, okay, because in your first year, I have a lot of students who like to do this, right? So you talk about how it's work, okay, there are 360 degrees, why stick to one, okay? So many of her design, if you look at it, she is also being called queen of curves, okay, because there's a lot of curves, right, in this design, in her design, right? So probably your most favorite, okay, I don't know, you have to ask your lecturers, okay? Back in my days, this is what I see, also even now, okay? So a lot of this kind, okay? So when you like this kind of shapes, then you need to understand what are the elements, what are the principles, so that you can pick this up and put it in your concept, right? Okay, so if you look here, interesting, intense, directional, spiral, strong, bold, flamboyant, there's a lot more, fluidity, and a lot, okay? So when you write your approaches, it should be aligned to all this, right? So you need those characteristics to build up your approaches. A lot of time, it's not there. I don't know whether to start, maybe that. That's why you need to put that vocab. The architecture vocab now need to be established. You need to start to think about that, okay? Because along the way, you only have 3 years, okay? In the 3 years, kalau you tahu how many projects, tak banyak pun project, okay? So this is where what I like is when I tell my finalist student ataupun my master student, I can always relate. I can always say, now you sit next to Abu, okay? You can actually imagine Abu's design macam mana. Sebab after few attempts, it will always repeat almost the same similarity. Okay, so these are the things that will keep on being repeating and later one day becomes your philosophy. Okay, so when I talk about finding your elements, this is what I meant. One day you are going to find that elements in you which define your philosophy. Okay, right? But you need to inculcate these good habits. Every time you design a project, you must challenge yourself to actually compose your approaches, your design approach, design concept. Okay, tak banyak pun. Sampai the final year, you realize there's only what? Maybe 15 projects or 10 projects. out of the 10 projects, you can actually see the pattern. That makes you a great designer. All right, okay? So coming back to this, so you talk about radial design approach uses various sizes of circles that branch out from central point, multi-directional. You see, it's a combination of things, right? Okay, this is one of the examples. Read about this, it's very interesting. Yeah, this is actually an outdoor space layout. Okay, so you know when we talk about winding river of the path prolongs the approach, and in so doing opens up new perspective and expression for the visitor. Okay, there's no river here. Okay, but the write-up is made in a way that it describes that. So it's like a river going through the sea. So you see, you created that. Okay, right? Okay, then you have this. Okay, slightly to the circular part, but not entirely, right? So if you look at this, right, you tengok dia punya form. It uses arc and tangent. What does arc and tangent? Arc the jari, tangent. So if you look here, it's something like that, right? So you combine. So it's not entirely circlish, but it has, some lines to it, right? So you talk about it being add on with square bits and so on. Then you talk about soft, flowing, soothing, inviting, transitional, smooth, and so on, right? So these are missing. A lot of times when you do your design, right, you don't go towards that. These are actually being joyful about your design, right? You use all these kind of words, There was one of my students last year who graduated. I think you know him, Yushan. Okay, Yushan, when he did his 4 weeks project of philosophy, okay, his design philosophy is a hari okay, because he said architecture is being flirtatious, okay, flirt, right? So what does he mean by that? No, so yeah, that's your philosophy. So when he approached his design, okay, that he wants, attention, inviting. It has curves and all that. Okay, so sometimes, the thing that you put, to describe yourself. So sekarang, I can easily do an exercise. I said, give me 2 elements that describe yourself. So daripada that 2 elements, you might say I'm reserved, I'm shy. Okay, but if you can actually relate that design, it can be actually. So slowly you try to see that in you. Okay, right. So coming back to this, okay, then you have this, right? What principle is it using? What kind of principle? There's a lot of repetition, but don't just talk about repetition, When you have this, repetition is in different hierarchy, and somehow does this feel harmonious? Does this feel, it gives, that's why there's a lot of terms that you can actually use for principles. I mean, as simple, the simplest is of course repetitions, okay, but actually there are a lot more, okay, so try to venture to that. Okay, I may not today, memang tak sempat nak go through one by one, but that's your homework to do, because you can actually use that for your design, okay. So it gives a very soothing kind of, you look at this and you rasa tenang, kan? It's just a form of facade, kan? But it gives you that, right? Okay, then you have this, okay, taking influence from the bazaar. So the bazaar is opposite, okay. So look how it is being reinterpreted. Okay, so sometimes you take some of the elements and bring back to your design. Okay, you don't have to fully replicate. Okay, you can take it as some elements there. So these elements should be part of your approach. Betul tak? Okay, right. Okay, so that brings me towards the end of the class. Okay, right. So I cannot not touch this. Okay, other than giving you what is good, how you should do, I also have to understand this. Okay, there are also things that blocks conceptualizing. Okay, when we talk about this, right? A lot of people experience this. Okay, so if I were you, I would be here to listen on how not to do this. Okay, so there's 3 things. Okay, I'm sure there can be a lot more, right? Peer pressure, break up with girlfriends, there's a lot of other things, okay? But these are the common ones, right? So, communication problems, okay, no of you actually have this, okay? Communication problems can be in many ways, okay? Verbally, okay? Drawing communication is also lost. Some way, you tak boleh nak capai. Now because you're not doing computing, you might find yourself at difficulties when you just start to go for complex project, and yet you feel that I cannot. So then how you do it? Okay. So there are a lot of ways to do it, right? Okay. In experience, some of you are from pure science stream. When I started my lecture in the first year, I was from pure science stream. Many of you are here. So sometimes you don't have that, the flair and so on, right? Okay, but don't worry. Okay, it's been identified. Generating hierarchies. Okay, this is very important. Okay, the third part is actually your process. Okay, that process, if you, this way, concept. So you jump into concept. You buka Google, oh, this nice concept, nice. Okay, ni anak. So you actually skip. Alright, you tak buat that. The center part, remember that part too, where it is actually talking about synthesis, talking about principles, talking about elements, so you skip that, right? So that is jumping hierarchies, okay? Right, so what you do, okay? You have a concept but you don't know how to communicate. Okay, simple. You might look at this as being something that you practice, okay? But this is actually generating a concept, right? So multiple tools, drawing, use Subtractive Concepts models. Okay. Use Subtractive, maybe I use it for my fourth year. You have to use a lot of text still. Okay, I think short text, but what I'm saying here, in the first year, you should get your vocab. Okay. We have last year, some of the comments are saying first year you tak cukup vocab architecturally. So kita tak nak that kind of comments because it's not about comments. It doesn't matter what people say. But is it true that you don't have enough? So that is what it is. Okay. When you present, this is where when you present, you have to start to use the right communication tools even when you speak. Why? Bila approach tu, you kena spell out the approach. Okay. You cakap empty ke void. You see, there's difference, right? Kan empty space. I want to create an empty space here. Use voids. Okay, so you need to build up your vocab now. Okay, conceptual models is the last part. Very important, very crucial. Now you might have computer conceptual model, good. Okay, a blessing if you do. Okay, but sometimes it's so interesting also if you can use. I mean, you're in the first year. Come on, use your hand. Guna buat model. Buat model so interesting. Okay. Okay, so how can I express the concept? Okay, drawings of geometric shapes to show different relationship within the space. Remember that I talked just now about your process. So actually, these are process of generating your. Kadang you rasa banyak kerja tau, but actually it will bring you somewhere. Okay, don't think about if. Oh nak jadi buat ni kan? For what? Lecturer tengok ke? No, it's not about that. It's about it drives you from one to the next. Lecturer memang akan tengok. This is where we look. Okay? We don't say it, but we look. Okay? Sometimes your most hideous drawing, we look. Okay? So please explore that. Try it. I'm sure it gets better in the third year. If you think that first year hideous, you don't use the word hideous, but maybe in the third year we get better. Right? Okay, so we do this process. Okay? Then yang kata, right, so this is what you do, okay? Even your site analysis can be in this form, right? So it goes through a process. Dulu what we do, we overlay paper, okay? Sekarang ni you tak nak, semua ambil komputer, terus shot, keluar semua. Fair enough, that's your way, okay? Less paper, better. Okay, we have a lot of papers overlay, Tak lain nak buka, every time print 12 surat. Then I ask you, how many you got? You see? Lecturer pula sometimes 5 je. I don't realize that. I always say that. So, we faham tak? Right? So, these are processes. But if you can generate this out, by all means, go. Less paper, please. Yeah, go. But this process ni, kita nak tengok what is the output lah. So these are actually approaches yang you buat. Okay, tetapi approaches ni dia ada banyak cara daripada synthesis. So approaches, the approach that you actually choose for your concept, dia takkan ada 10 tau, 3, 4 je. Okay, be exclusive on that. Okay, they may be 10. Okay, but take the 3, 4 most relevant. That's the trick. Okay, memang if you read architects magazine, there's a lot, 10 things that they actually do. But you look at the approach, berapa je dia highlight, and what are the statement, dia akan take the most impactful. That's how we sell a project. Okay, right. How can I express it? Then, okay, party, okay, I tahu lah zaman dulu party dia apa tak. Okay, but you know, there's a type of diagram that serves as a general idea to figure out a building program on the hub. Okay, they are usually in the form of quick sketches or even 3D models. This is what I meant up. Okay, the drawings, and then let's start. Okay, by all means, kalau you kata, okay, I'm so good at computer, I want to do. I mean, I appreciate that, but take it out. Jangan bawa pergi kat pusing-pusing kat depan kita baling the laptop. You take it out, you print it out. Say this is the angle that I had. This is where. No, so then you start to. That way, your ideas they can generate it. Okay, and then you have that example that all this helps. Okay, please enjoy this process. Dia tak lama, 3 years je. So do all this modeling. You know, if I could come back to my degree, yes, I would. You know, because it was so enjoyable. Bahasa masa tu kita semua swearing because so expensive during our time. It was expensive. Okay, kita share tau. Tapi you know but we have to enjoy the process. Okay, right. I want to share you a bit. Okay, so this was what happened last year. Last year. Okay, right. So the 4th year, what we do in the 2nd semester, we have housing project. Yeah, 50 acres housing project. So you have to design 3 development, mixed development. You can buat low cost, medium cost, high rise. Okay, so it comes to a point where design can be so complicated. Okay, it's again, I think it's about 12 weeks project. It's a long week project. Okay, so this is actually students' work. Okay, so high rise ni. So I think if you show your lecturer, pening kepala lah tengok high rise macam ni kan. Okay, like this. So design a high rise. There's a lot of things that you need to look at. You punya fire distance and so on. Okay, so the worst thing was when the COVID hits, we had to do this online. That's the worst that you can get. Like 50 acres project, online how, and we have maybe 8 in a group. Okay, so semua individual work, so dia kena buat low cost, medium cost, high end. So problems, right? Problem comes, ni mungkin dah minggu ke-9, about to submit. This student, one problem only on high rise, memang tak settle. Very good student, design skills, clear, very good. Since first year I knew him, he can really very draw, but when it comes to this, because tak pernah buat, high rise, lepas tu buat residential. Don't know how, tight space, so cannot solve, right? So the only thing that he has, of course, is SketchUp lah. So he come up with all this, And when I don't have his SketchUp, he only got his SketchUp, so it's so difficult to. Okay, so at the end, what I did was this, So I took my science Lego, Duplo. That's the best way, and it settled in few hours. So what I'm trying to say here is actually the not the Lego part lah, but it's actually the modeling. The modeling part helps a lot when you cannot see. Okay, I explained to him, he cannot understand. I draw, he cannot understand. Maybe he's panic tau, Yeah, you're talking about very big project, and then you ada lagi 2 minggu nak submit, you tak siap lagi. So you have 200 units to design. Okay, so I sent him this, few hours, understood, jalan, settle. Okay, so sometimes memang, when you're talking about this 4th year, 5th year, they can actually, the Goldman dah boleh buat komputer dah. But there will be times where you cannot rely on computers. Okay, you need to think of how, like details. So what you do is, right, you start to put things together. I mean, as someone who has to create, sometimes I cannot get the idea as well. So, how do we communicate, right? So, this is your first year. Go through this process. learn to start. Okay, and then later on you get your computer, you might not want to come back, fair enough, but you know, these are the process that you have to go through. Okay. Right, so again, morphology, study of form, things in particular. Okay, so these are the things that you do and you have to do it. Okay, so out of this, maybe massing, macam ni dan tengok, these are synthesizing lah, massing, sign, and so on. This is not yet approach. Okay, but when it comes to approach, katalah, and then you say, okay, you to step up, then I want to have this axis. Okay, I started to create an axis so that, you know, then we start to bring all this work. So that is coming towards your approach. Okay, so you must be able to differentiate what is synthesizing, what is approach. Okay, so approach, dia akan ada design intent sikit. So whatever your concept design intention tadi, it is also being applied in your approach. Okay, kalau dia masih sama macam kawan you sebelah punya synthesis, that is not approach. Okay, approach, konsep, you saja yang buat. Kadang-kadang ada juga, macam last exercise I had, both of them, because they had to choose one archetype, both of them chose Tadawan group. Both in the same group. Okay, so I said, I'm not worried, because I know both of you will be different in many ways. Okay, you duduk sebelah-sebelah, unless you're twins. Okay, sometimes we have this, you know, kind intuition and all that, kan? Mungkin sama, but it's not the same. Right, so those what makes you different, okay? And then yeah, program landscape. So this is what I talk about, okay? And then you have this diagram examples, okay? A lot of time, okay, these are actually the way to help you, because sometimes you have the concept, right? But you don't know how to go home, okay? So from your floor plan, you need to do this, okay? When you start to have this in place, then you start. What more if this one will be able to approach? Okay, kalau kata you want it to, every room has a view. Then you will see whether the view ke tak. Dalam plan mungkin tak nampak. Dalam 3D you akan nampak. So this is where it's very important for you to have that. Okay, this is more important when we talk about sections. Okay, a lot of you tak nak buat section awal-awal. No, it's susah, difficult for me to understand and so on. Actually, in the section can help you to achieve better approaches. Try that. Okay? When you talk about elevated space, when you talk about mezzanine floor, can you imagine mezzanine floor plan? No, it's difficult, right? So sections help a lot. Okay, so sometimes when you have topographical, you know, condition, right? So dia ada topografi dan susah. So memang tak boleh. Okay, so this is the project that I told you. Again, I know it's master's level, but it's okay. Okay, let's just have this practice. Okay, so identify these philosophies, but that's what they have to do. So like this student as well, we did Kenyang, right? So can anybody tell me where is actually the design philosophy? Boleh design philosophy. But they're quite confused. Macam ni contohnya, like this is what Kenyang is like. A green building should look green, which means having, right? So that is, in a way, is one of his philosophy, right? Everybody knows Kenyang, so that is basically his, okay? Today I got some betul marah. Sebab masa tu I don't really get from here. He has this, but he didn't put his face. Okay, so we want them to put his face so that he is brave enough. Because many of them actually use this project and use the philosophy sampai dia habis graduate. So in any project, he talks about his philosophy. Okay, so for example, in order to create a better architecture that is better habitat, we have to assist in the creation of little. So, do I say this wrong? I don't see it wrong because it's his philosophy. But yang penting whether he achieved that in his concepts or not. Okay. So, concept, there's approach. Look, this is concept. Look, freedom, we thinking freedom, a pathway with simplicity. Right? So, can you see one word of principles there? What is it? right? Sometimes you use principle. So that's why I kata bila you dah jam, when you don't know how, actually principles and elements can help you to generate a concept. Okay? So rethinking freedom, accompanied with simplicity. Okay, so they were designing offices. And I think it's an architect's office, right? So we talk about, freedom and all that. Okay, so if you look at the green achieve, right? Study formatting spaces. Okay, so these are the things, right? So if you look at here, site analysis, all this, right? So this has meanings, right? Okay, then that visualization to enhance design. Okay, so this is what projects mean, and then the last one is the details, right? Okay, so this brings me to my last slide, which I actually had this earlier when I said that this is a very important slide. Okay, because this explains again concept, approaches, and building and product. The last one. Okay, so when you look at all that we have learned before or will learn later, philosophy, your design concept, and so on, all of this will be in this page. Okay, whether it is on the concept and so on, right? So I hope that gives a little bit of ideas, and I think it's for you now to actually start to develop your concept. Okay, if you don't, it's going to be late. Okay, you have to have this, excitement when you dapat project je. Okay, what should be my now? Okay, it doesn't have to be the same every time. Okay, but philosophy, yes. But that philosophy, you may not tell yourself, let your friends tell you. Because usually, by observation, we can, I do that, we always do that. When I was at my studio years, all of us like talk about one and another and talk about this guy, the punya style macam ni. So I think you're going to go through the same process, okay? But if you don't go through the right way of generating concept and so on, you akan lambat identifying that. So that's why I'm getting a lot of students coming back in the fourth year, like panic when we ask them. They really got panic. Okay, actually 3 of them had made submission. 2 computer problem, kan? Orang kata apa? Common tradition punya ni. And one memang betul-betul, like had this. The one who was actually the guy who came up with the frame concept. So sometimes you choose a concept that's too big for you. It looks very simple. When you talk about frame, I thought that was brilliant. When he came to me for free, he said he want this frame. I was like, wow, I like that. Okay, but it turns out it's difficult for him to achieve. So kadang-kadang a simple concept, and it goes back to you as well. Sometimes you start to think too much, and then that's it. Okay, so start very simple. Okay, try just to use your understanding of element and principle to generate your concept. From there, it will bring you somewhere. Okay, right. So with that, I end my talk. I hope you guys can benefit, even if it's a bit from it. Okay, so this is I have this. So if you are not talented, okay, some of you may say, because we do have people who are born in the architect's family and so on. Okay, but don't worry, because hard work beats talents when talent doesn't work hard. So this is a very, I think, strong quote to actually push you. Okay, so if you do hard work, it always should benefit you. Okay, all right, thank you very much, everyone.
Any questions? Questions. Don't ask me later.
Any question?
Ask the priority now.
If you want to talk about concept, if you have any issues, tell us about this is
Mimikri dengan metafora tu.
Metafor dengan?
Mimikri.
Oh, okay, biomimicry. Okay, biomimicry dengan metaphors. How do I say? Biomimicry too, it's quite recent. The word is quite recent. Maybe 5-10 years back lah juga, kan? But it is when we talk about metaphors, people always relate it like as an object, as the thing, but sometimes it can be abstracted. So that's why I kata verses, kan? There's something that is carried on from metaphors to biomimicry. Okay? So biomimicry, I don't know, if you ask me, I would say it's actually a combination of things. Okay, mungkin lagi sounded lagi canggih. Like, for example, you talk about biofilling, eh? Biofilling is not new. You talk about organic architecture back then, that relates to biofilling as well. Of course, like with the studies and all, it's almost the same. It's a replication of nature's elements, any parts of nature's elements. So it's almost the same. Okay, a lot of students, memang in the first year, second year, you will go towards that environment. It's alright, but for me, venture it thoroughly. Maksudnya kalau you nak buat the structure, talk about the trusses, what kind of trusses that you see. You go towards until that, then it's really a biomimicry. It's not just luar nampak macam tenggiling, that's it. Okay. Right? Okay. Anything else? How's your concept? Okay. Dah buat project on concept dah.
Hari ni first week.
Oh, okay. See, so you must enjoy that process. Tapi I know it's quite new for you. Tapi try to see lah. I mean, a lot of things can be done from precedent and so on. You tengok. Tapi jangan just grab dia macam tu. You have to go through the process. Check what is the synthesis and so on. Then you get back. Okay, right. So I suppose no more questions. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Narati, for the extensive input on concept and design principles. Did you guys learn a lot today? Did you guys really learn a lot today?